ICRT.
Welcome to Taiwan Talk. My name is Trevor Tortomasi, and today we're speaking with Ljius Rakuljivu, Paiwan Indigenous youth and scholar. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Ljius, can you tell me what you've been working on recently?
Actually, I just graduated from graduate school. I wrote my thesis about urban indigenous people, and it's also about myself, my returning home and issues growing up in my township, and how I feel about my indigenous community.
Where is home for you?
Home for me is Tjuvecekadan, my hometown, New Tjuvecekadan, to be specifically. It's located in Paiwan County, an indigenous community with around 2,000 people, and I grew up there. And for me, home is where the culture is, so Tjuvecekadan is important for me.
You mentioned Tjuvecekadan and New Tjuvecekadan.
Yes.
Can you tell us the difference and which one is the new one?
Okay, so Tjuvecekadan is a name of the old town. It's located in a mountain area of Paiwan County, and it has been existing for at least 400 years, dating back to the Dutch written document. And it's a slate stone house village with 50 slate stone houses in the past, and we still have that, and it's one of the potential heritage sites by the Bureau of Cultural Heritage, Ministry of Culture in 2010, and this is where our ancestor came from, Tjuvecekadan. But when the government from China came to Taiwan, KMT, they forced people to move from Tjuvecekadan to a new place called in the valley called Tjugangan.
Wow.
The river valley, and we lived there for 10 years. We were forced to move it in 1961 from Old Tjuvecekadan, the old town. And people lived there in the valley from 1961 to 1971 when the typhoon destroyed Tjugangan. And then the government also we have to be relocated because it's destroyed, so we moved to the plain area in 1971, and we call it New Tjuvecekadan. And also not just people from Tjuvecekadan that suffer from the typhoon, but also other Paiwan groups around Tjuvecekadan. They also moved to New Tjuvecekadan, so there are 4 Paiwan groups living there, plus one Chinese Han Taiwanese group.
Okay, so after that, were you born in New Tjuvecekadan?
Yes, I was born there in 1992. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was schooled there from kindergarten up to elementary school, and I brought up by my grandparents. And my grandparents had farmland in the old town, Tjuvecekadan.
Mm-hmm.
And
that one's much higher on the mountain.
Yes. It's about...
How far away from...
it's 40 minutes by a scooter with gear.
Whoa.
Yeah, but it's 1 hour by a car. Yeah, but much of the road were destroyed by a typhoon in 2009, Morocco typhoon.
Wow.
Yeah, so a lot of roads are still under construction. Yeah.
Can you tell me about the difference between those two towns, like where you grew up and when you visited your grandmother up further in the mountains? What was that like?
Actually, living in the mountain, there's no electricity, so we use candle to light up the room. And I mean, my grandparents live there, but they also come back to the new town regularly for church. They're Christian, and living in Old Tjuvecekadan is you can hear the sound of many birds, like owls, things like that. And I was the only child, I remember, when I was there, because all the kids are living in the new town. So sometimes I feel bored, but sometimes I feel lots of appreciations I have after I grew up, because as I grew up, I left my community in the old town and I go to the city, and it reminds me how I enjoyed my life back in Tjuvecekadan, just surrounded by nature, and just playing by myself in the field, and just see taros and many crops growing up, and I just it reinforced my attachment to my old community when I left for city, for school. Yeah, and the life there is I would say very simple. I don't know when we went to bed, but I think it's early maybe when darkness came, and then we just maybe spent 2 hours and slept. And it's also interesting that all of houses are built traditionally, like with slate stone houses. So it's like a flat slate and stacking up, and they also have like a rooftop made of like slate stone houses. And
does that feel hotter?
No,
actually, cooler?
Actually, the house breathes.
Wow.
Because there's little cracks, right? And also the house is built with wood structure. So every time we enter to a traditional slate stone house, we have to start a fire to keep the insect out. Because insects are going to eat all the wood.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what we do. And we also have to organize all the slates on the rooftop regularly, like at least once a year. And that's traditional. But when my grandpa, he used to be a construction worker, and he knew how to use cement. So actually he built kind of modernized style of slate stone house. Like he has this like a cement wall, but the rooftop is still like a slate stone. So I think that's the first cement style slate stone house ever built in Tjuvecekadan, our family house. And also he also built a toilet next to the slate stone house.
Made of slate stone?
No.
Okay.
Concrete.
Okay. At least it wasn't wood, I would say.
Yes.
So that's a little bit about what it's like in Tjuvecekadan. Now in New Tjuvecekadan, further down the mountain, what was life like growing up for you? I
would say that New Tjuvecekadan is one of the most popular or populous region for Paiwan people. It has first convenience store in Indigenous district, 7-Eleven. It's built in 1999.
Wow.
Yes. And it also has a night market every Monday. Before Tjuvecekadan people are forced to relocate to the area, there are like already some Paiwan people and Han Taiwanese people there. And that area is already like a trade like a point. And when we all moved down, the population increased greatly, and then we have business going up. I think it's interesting because the owner of the convenience store is also indigenous, Paiwan. So I think it has two sides, but my experiences in indigenous communities is kind of different from other people's experiences. It's more modernized.
More marginal?
Modernized, more
modernized.
More business going on there.
Can you tell me what it was like in your village? What was the social structure? What was daily life like when you were growing up in New Tjuvecekadan?
Yeah, for me, in my community or many Paiwan community, they have this Vusan system. Paiwan is
Vusam?
Vusam means the firstborn child in the family. And regardless of the gender, so male, female, children can be Vusan as long as they're firstborn. And Paiwan people believe the first child in the family who is Vusan, who sees the sunlight, the first sunlight of that generation. And a Vusan is expected to continue a family name. So, for example, if my dad is a firstborn or my mom is a firstborn, or whatever, that I'm first child, I will carry their name. We have in Paiwan we name a house, and the house is our last name. Okay, so for example, if my dad is Rakuljivu, a firstborn child, he's a firstborn child and a firstborn child, I would take his name, and my other siblings, they will have my father's name until they get married and they have built their own house and married to someone else, or they're married to other Vusan and then they take other people's names, or they have the new names based on the house.
Oh, what happens if two non-Vusam get married?
Well, they'll have new name given by Vusam sibling from one of the spouse.
So there are lots of new names coming up all the time.
Yeah, based on the house and the land. Yes.
Cool.
So name changes. Mm-hmm. Yes, and also female Vusan's spouse is expected to live with Vusan's family and take care of the Vusan's family, and the Vusan also has to take care of the whole family.
So it comes with a lot of responsibilities,
expectations, and something like that. And for me, I am firstborn of my parents. but not the family. But I'm the firstborn, like a grandchild for my grandparents. So they had a lot of expectations on me, even though I'm not the firstborn, but I'm the firstborn of the family. And I feel it is different when it comes to their upbringing. Every time they ask me to, like, when I visit other relatives and my parents, so you have to, like, go say hi to all the elders or something like that. But my parents would not say that to my younger sisters. And one thing is that they're also very supportive for my education. They think that I'm the seat of the family, so that they put all the resources on me and to maximize my education, because they believe education is a key to change life or something like that.
Absolutely it is.
Yeah, that's their beliefs. So, yeah.
So what was it like moving into an urban area? How did you start to feel your life change?
I started to feel my life change when I was in urban area. That academically, that in my junior high school, the workload is so different. And also people that I in class with, I feel my uniqueness, because they all look different. They look different from me. I have darker skin, bigger eyes, and they have like a lighter skin and a smaller eyes and a very good grades. And sometimes I feel like it's weird when they see me. If I do something and my peers, my classmates, well, indigenous people always like that, like you, something like that.
You felt like you were representing something that you didn't ask to represent.
Yes, just everything is
unfair.
about indigenous. I said, no, it's not accurate. I don't sing or I don't play sports well. I'm not like a stereotypical image of indigenous people, something like that. And I feel like I have to prove that I'm no different. And when I went to city, indigenous students have this educational incentives, meaning that it's indigenous education incentive for high school and college entrance exam. So it's one of the policies of affirmative action on indigenous students. They have an extra 35 score addition to high school and college entrance exam if they pass the indigenous language proficiency tests. And I was asked many times when I go to high school, because I went to the top high school in Pingtung. And people in my school, teachers sometimes, they say something sounds very casual, sounds very just funny, but for me it's like
kind of hurtful.
It's like, for example, when I think we were on 12th grade, we're preparing for college exam, and one of the teachers in my school said that, teaching us about the strategies to maximize your scores and blah 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 blah, a lot of strategies, and he said, unless you have 优良血统, I don't know how to say it in English. It's a blood, good blood or higher blood or something like that. Yeah,
that's kind of disgusting to hear people still think like that.
Yeah, but I don't know how to fight back. I don't know how to talk back, because it's like the education that I was receiving was always about history, about other cultures, not much about indigenous cultures and indigenous festivals or Paiwan traditions or hierarchy or something like that. No, it's taught very shallowly. When I was a kid in elementary school, I was not aware of the issues happening around my community. What I wanted is to go out, because I feel like city is flashy, everything's good there, but I don't really appreciate my own culture because I'm not aware of that.
Right, you want to play the games.
Yeah,
you
I want to play the games. I want to play Diablo 2 or something like that. And unlike Cafe, when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I was so addicted to playing, playing Diablo 2.
You're not the only one. We might cut this out later, but yeah.
Yes. So when I was a kid, I'm not aware of that. But when I went to college and also junior and senior high school, I started to figure out my uniqueness, and I was questioned by my Han Taiwanese peers they ask do you know how to speak your language? Do you know how to sing or something like that? And I think that to myself, yeah, do I know? Something like that. And it started to have these issues, and everything started to kind of explode in college. It feels like it is an imperative to connect or to know about where you come from and your local issues in order to make you indigenous. So this kind of discussion for me is like, I had this confused when I was in senior high school, but now I realize it's a simulation like a policy.
Has that changed recently with recognition of more tribes around Taiwan?
Yes, I think that changed from indigenous schools in local schools, and people are able to develop teaching materials aiming with a cultural sensitive subject, so kids can get involved or know the knowledge about local culture early from elementary school. And then I think the government or people are still working on to produce more educational materials for other junior high school and senior high school, and then to finally to establish a college that is aiming for indigenous knowledge, something like that.
Well, now you're a top student. You're working on your thesis, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell me about your thesis and what it's about?
The thesis I was trying to talk about is so in 2015 and 2016, I befriended young people originally from Tjuvecekadan, and they're educated outside Tjuvecekadan. They don't have not much of experiences in the town, and they wanted to go back to look for their identity, to learn culture in Tjuvecekadan and Tjuvecekadan culture. And we started a project in 2015, 2016, and there are 3 urban indigenous young people that I know from the project, and I interviewed them in how their life, and there are a lot of labels on them. They're urban indigenous, they're Paiwan, they're students, they're top students or something like that, and what is an implication to be indigenous for them in the contemporary world, and how does 部落, we call 部落 is in Mandarin is just a community, but this word is specifically, I don't know why specifically for indigenous people, but it's not a legal one. And we say 部落, it's how their sense of rootedness has
the sense of
changed.
their roots.
Root has changes throughout times through their interaction with people in Tjuvecekadan and the urban area. The interplays of their social relations in urban area, Tjuvecekadan, and also abroad. How does that experience affect their identity about Tjuvecekadan? Well, luckily I met some urban indigenous young people to work on the project with. I didn't go abroad to Australia, and accompanied by other cultural groups, like performing groups from Taiwan, and I came with indigenous groups, mainly they're mostly Paiwan, and we're there to perform for the Sydney Taiwan Week. It's an activity held by overseas Australian Taiwanese Australian there, and we visited many schools and we talked about our culture. And I perform there and also help interpret for the event.
When you encounter indigenous people of other sort of Pacific Island areas, maybe Australia, or if you've met Maori people, have you found a sort of connection there as deep as language or culture?
I feel there are a lot of things in common. The language sounds very similar.
Really?
Because so indigenous languages of Taiwan is seen as the root of the Austronesian language family. And Austronesian languages are spoken by mainly indigenous peoples. I think people in Taiwan, they see indigenous people as a big group, but actually there are variations within different groups, and even within different communities, the different culture. So when you approach indigenous people, that is very important to understand what's going on in their community rather than seeing them as a whole group together, same group. No, something like that.
Is the language very, very different from tribe to tribe?
Yes. It's very different. Like, okay, there are 16 indigenous groups, right? And there are 42 dialects. Even in Paiwan, there are like 4 different dialects. But the differences between Paiwan languages are not that large. But people understand, they can like communicate with each other. But some group, even they're in the same group, they're speaking different languages. Like, for example, people of Dayan group, like Dayan, Sedek, Dayan, and also Daruku. They have similar culture. They have like face tattoo, but the languages within their own groups are also very different. Yes, and not all people can communicate. Even they're the same. They're categorized as the same people. Yeah, and also Rukai people too. Rukai is Paiwan. It's indigenous groups, but I remember there are 3 communities, Rukai communities in Pingdong. There are 3, and they speak 3 different languages, but they are in the same category as Rukai.
In all the Austronesian languages sort of influence, you said Taiwan's indigenous peoples' languages is sort of a primogenitor of that?
Yes, it's this origin of that.
Okay.
And in many studies that has pointed to that point, and pointing to that Taiwan's indigenous languages are the origin. Well, for example, when in my community, when we say thank you, we say masalu. Hawaiians say mahalu. Yeah, and we count numbers like idalu sa jilu siba ima bichu au shiva unen tabluk. 1 to 10 is very similar across the Austronesian region. Lima is 5 and is common for most Austronesian speaking region.
Is there a system that's continuing language education of the Paiwan language to youths in Tjuvecekadan?
Yes, and well, there are different aspects, like their language teaching efforts in public school systems that were taught about Paiwan language when we were in elementary school. And I think that also goes to, like, I remember the class is called 乡土教学. It's like a local cultural class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everyone born in 1992, I think they experiences that. So Taiwanese who speak Taiwanese, they learn Taiwanese, and Hakka, they learn Hakka, and Paiwan people learn Paiwan languages. Yes. When I was there in school, but it's like 2 hours every week. Yeah.
So not a lot of immersion.
Not a lot.
Okay.
Not a lot of immersion. And
do you speak is it called Paiwan?
Yeah,
the
Paiwan.
Language?
Yes.
Do you speak Paiwan with your parents as well?
Actually, I don't.
Okay.
I speak Paiwan with my peers if I could, but my parents not really. But I was, I grew up listening to Paiwan language from my grandparents and their friends, so I can listen. My speaking is weak, but I can manage daily life with Paiwan languages. I don't know, like my grandparents, my parents, they are, I don't know why when they turned to me, they spoke Mandarin to me. It's interesting because it's not just happening to me, other families too. Maybe they want us to get involved in the society, so we learn Mandarin or something like that.
Did your parents grow up in a similar sort of assimilation of learning Mandarin in public school?
They have a harsher time when they're in school. When they're in elementary school, junior high school, senior high school, Taiwan, I remember that Taiwan was under martial law. Right. So there was a policy that banning people from speaking dialects, including Taiwanese Hakka, in school setting. If you're caught speaking dialects, then you have to get fined. You have to pay. Yeah, and you have to wear this kind of tag, say like something, just some bad words.
Sort of shaming people.
Shaming people, yes.
Who spoke other languages.
Yes, I think that also impacted on how my parents perceive Paiwan language and Mandarin. Yeah, but in my generation, it's all long gone. We don't have that. Yeah.
That's good, and I'm glad the language education continues then for the next generation.
Yes,
so there's still people speaking it.
Yes, it is important.
If there's ever anyone raising a kid and wondering if you should teach them an extra language, yes, do it. Teach your kids as many languages as you can.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you very much for coming on Taiwan Talk this week. Ljius Rakuljivu, thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening. See you next time.